Okay, so now we're going to talk about, as you can see on line 8, the type of inspections that may be applicable to your buyer's property. You have an energy audit, home inspection, termite or pest inspections, and just so you know, on a VA loan, that is always a requirement to have a termite pest inspection done. Roof inspection, a septic lid removal or septic inspection, if applicable. Survey. Generally speaking, if you're buying a home that is already in a subdivision that has been lot and blocked, we generally don't need a survey. However, if we're buying a property that's maybe out on an open range or in a more rural area, that may be an applicable inspection for your property, and that's where you, as an agent, need to know how to advise your buyer. Fungal contaminant, mold inspection, mechanical inspection, the mechanical workings of a home. Pool and spa, if applicable. Soils inspections. Again, if you're buying a home, lot and blocked, generally speaking, a soils inspection is not required. But if we are doing a rural inspection, you may want to get those soils inspected if there was previously waste or things that might have been applicable on that property. Septic pumping ties in with the septic lid removal. If the home is not on public sewer and it has a septic inspection or a septic tank, highly encourage you to have that septic system inspected. Same thing with a well. Well inspection, quantity, quality. Are there water rights with that well? What's the quality of that water coming out of that well? We want to make sure that well is safe for drinking. Wood burning device or chimney. Is it an old school wood burning fireplace or is it a newer one for gas? Structural inspection. We're talking about the framing, maybe the trusses within the roof, okay? And then any other inspections that might be applicable to that property. Now, one thing I want to advise you of and keep you abreast of this, because I do see this quite a bit too. So we've had our inspections. For whatever reason, we're unable to come to an agreement with that particular seller on getting repairs done. So the deal falls apart and we cancel the deal. You have to advise your buyer as you are going through this part of the contract, all third-party fees are non-refundable. Oh, I just paid an inspector $250 to do the inspection. I just did a well or septic inspection for $350. Those are third-party vendors that have provided you a service regardless of the outcome of your transaction. Those are going to be non-refundable. Certifications. As you can see, number 11, line E. In the event something comes up on that inspection, we have a roof issue. There was mold. Something that is going to require a certification to say this roof is in good working order, or all of the mold has been remediated to acceptable standards. If something arises on an inspection like that, you want to employ a professional that specializes in that area so that you can get that certification for your buyer to show that the property has been properly remediated of all mold, the roof has been fixed, septic system, etc. Well, we'll jump back there. As you'll see here on line number 16, buyer's request for repairs. Now, we've already talked about that. We're going to provide a written document that basically states these are the items that the buyer deems unacceptable during the home inspection, and we would like these to be addressed. Now, anything that needs to be repaired, I highly encourage you to put on that inspection request all repairs to be completed by a licensed contractor. We don't want Billy Bob, the handyman, wiring a breaker. Possible fire hazard. We want a licensed certified electrician to make those repairs. Make sense? I thought it did. So once we've provided that seller with that written document, they've agreed to make those repairs, we can continue and move forward. Line 25, fees and prorations. These are going to talk about the fees that could be applicable during the process of a transaction. Escrow fees. We've got real estate property tax, lender's title policy, an appraisal, owner's title policy, and other. Any other fees that might be applicable. But you'll also see on there the term that says paid by. Who's going to pay for those? Now, those again can be negotiable. Traditionally, whatever's customary in your marketplace will dictate kind of how that flows, if you will. Escrow fees can be split 50-50. Transfer tax, when the seller sells a property, there's a tax to transfer from one entity to the other. The seller pay for that or the buyer. Again, these can also be negotiable, but we want to clarify who's going to pay for those in the contract. Line 30, item B, prorations. Prorations essentially are this. When you buy a property, there's going to be property taxes. If you're buying a property within an HOA, homeowners association, there's going to be fees. All sewer fees, right? Things of that nature. Garbage, trash. Anything that is applicable to that property will be prorated to the close of escrow date. So for example, if we close escrow on the 15th of March, the seller is liable for those fees up to the 14th. Seller takes over, or buyer, takes over from the 15th moving forward. So those fees will be prorated, if you will. Next item we have on the contract, line 37, item C, preliminary title report. Now, a few slides back, I talked about the preliminary title report. We want to review that title report during the due diligence period. Again, we want to look at, and most importantly, we want to see if there's any discrepancies. Mechanics liens, tax liens, any bad debt, anything that might not be normal, that our buyer doesn't have to incur the stress of that. They want to get free, clear title at closing. So we're going to review that report, and the title and escrow company handling your transaction or the real estate attorney will generally provide you with that report to review. Now again, big caution here, guys. A lot of times we get this title report, we send it to our buyer via email. They don't know what they're looking at. You have to be versed in what a preliminary title report looks like and are there any red flags. So I encourage you to review that with your buyer so that you're both on the same page and you can answer any questions they may have. Next, we're going to talk about lender closing cost. Now, there are fees associated with purchasing a property. Loan origination fees, appraisal fees, so forth and so on. Now, on this, if we want a buyer, or to have a seller rather, pay for some of those costs. So example would be is maybe I have a buyer who has limited resources, and they want the seller to pay for some of those costs to help offset some of that. We would put that here in addition to seller's expenses, seller will contribute X amount of dollars to the buyer's closing cost. So this is where that would go, depending on, if any, your buyer needs that assistance. Line number 8, item E, home protection plan. Now, don't get confused on a home protection plan with homeowner's insurance, if you will, okay? A home protection plan is essentially a third-party warranty that can be put into place, again, negotiable, buyer or seller pays for that, to cover that property once you've closed escrow. My water heater's covered, my HVAC's covered. Anything goes wrong, that's an additional policy that helps offset the cost of any of those possible repairs. And again, that is negotiable. As you can see here, buyer waives it, or they require it, who's going to pay for it? Okay. What I see a lot of times, buyers say, oh, well, why do I need that? And for the examples I just gave you, well, Bob, you moved into your new home, everything checked out fine on the home inspection. 3 weeks later, the water heater goes bad. Now you've got coverage, Bob, to pay for that water heater to get it working again. Makes good sense, so always encourage your buyer to do so. Now, we can ask the seller to pay for that. If the seller pays for it, great. If not, then your buyer can take that cost on their own. Transfer of title. Upon COE. COE is another acronym. As you'll see throughout a real estate contract, there's a lot of acronyms we use. Close of escrow. And it just basically says that upon the agreed upon close of escrow date, the title will transfer from from seller to buyer. We've done everything that we need to do during that process, and it's transferring through. Next item on there, line 20, item 10, common interest community, or acronym CIC. Now that's just another term, guys, for HOA, Homeowners Association. When you buy a home within a homeowners association, the seller has 2 business days of acceptance to order that resale package, we call it. And essentially it's the rules, regulations, the financial strength of that homeowners association or common interest community, so the buyer can make an informed decision if they want to move forward or not. Once we receive those documents from the seller, the buyer has 5 calendar days to review and approve or disapprove. If you remember, we talked about contingencies. This is another contingency through the body of the contract. Line 37, item A, CIC expenses. Again, at the top, we have paid by, and again, what's customary for your area, but we have, is there a demand? Does the HOA charge a fee to get that stuff to the title company to see what those fees and the financial strength of the HOA is? Is there any capital contribution? Some HOAs charge a fee to say, okay, Mr. Buyer, you're going to pay into the HOA a capital contribution fee upon transfer of ownership, or maybe the seller pays it. Additional transfer fees, anything that could be applicable again, who's going to pay it, and it's negotiable. Within 5 calendar days of acceptance of this agreement, seller will provide the following disclosures to the buyer. Now, depending on where you're at, there's going to be specific disclosures that may or may not be applicable. We talk about item number 1, seller's real property disclosure. And if you're wondering, the NRS, that's Nevada Revised Statute, just so you know what that acronym is. Construction defect litigation, or construction defect disclosure, lead-based paint, and other, or open range. So let's talk about seller's real property disclosure. That is basically a document provided from the seller that says, here's items on the property that are in great working order, or maybe I've had some knowledge that there's been some defects, either current or previous, that have been corrected. They provide that to us, and again, as an agent, you should know this document inside and out. You should also look for any red flags. Construction defect claims. Were there any construction defect litigation on the builder who built that home? If there was, they should have a defect disclosure that they can provide you to see if it's still open or has it been resolved. Lead-based paint. That is only applicable if a home was built prior to 1978, where they utilized lead actually in the paint. Once 78 and above, newer, they've stopped that practice. So again, you need to be clear on if that disclosure is applicable or not. Open range. I'm not in a lot block subdivision. There's open range behind me. Is it federally protected land? Is it cattle grazing? If that's applicable, you need to know about that too.